Aidan sat by the window, the soft hum of city life filtering through his open balcony doors. His flat overlooked the park, a place that seemed to pulse with youthful energy, particularly in the evenings when the sun started to dip below the skyline. He'd become used to the sight of teenagers hanging out there, their voices rising and falling in the cool breeze. What caught his attention most, however, were the girls, young women, whose presence filled the park with a certain kind of naughtiness, a striking contrast to the more subdued, cautious figures he often saw around town. They were a distinct group, known around the area as chavs, a label they wore like a badge of honor. Their heavy makeup, the bronze glow of their fake tans, and the shiny PVC leggings, or tight latex pencil skirts that hugged their figures like a second skin, intrigued Aidan to an almost obsessive degree. But it wasn't just their clothing that captivated him. It was the way they moved, the way they carried themselves, skyscraper heels clicking sharply against the pavement, their chatter thick with suggestive phrases that rang out through the park like music to him. They laughed with such ease, strutted with such confidence. Aidan, on the other hand, often felt invisible, a quiet observer. He worked from home, his life a series of solitary tasks and brief, impersonal exchanges with co-workers over email. The teens in the park seemed to have an air of certainty that he couldn't quite grasp. They had a swagger, a kind of reckless joy, as though the world was theirs to conquer. And so, each evening, Aidan would sit by the window and watch them from afar, feeling an odd longing to understand the world they inhabited, to see the world through their eyes. One night, after a particularly vivid observation of one of the girls, a slender goddess with long blonde hair, legs encased in a shiny black skirt, lazily smoking a lipstick-smeared cigarette, Aidan felt something stir inside him. It wasn't just fascination, it was a pull, a sense that he wanted to be part of that world, even if only for a little while. The next day, he decided to do something impulsive. Aidan had never been the type to act without thought, but there was something about the thought of stepping into the shoes of these girls, of somehow becoming one of them, that felt thrilling. He found himself browsing online shops late into the evening, searching for something he could wear. After a few clicks, he settled on a glossy black latex pencil skirt, the kind the girls in the park seemed to favour, and a pair of towering black high heels in his size. It felt absurd, but he couldn't stop himself, so he popped them in his shopping cart and clicked buy now. When the package arrived the next day, Aidan barely hesitated before ripping it open. He could hardly believe what he held in his shaking hands, the smooth, cool latex skirt and the sharp, strappy heels. The sight of them was enough to send a wave of excitement through him. He had to try them on. In the privacy of his flat, Aidan slipped into the latex skirt, the cool material hugging his body as he slid up the zipper and fastened the gold clasp on the waistband. He gingerly stepped into the heels, wincing as the pressure on his feet shifted his balance. But as he stood up, something strange and exhilarating bubbled within him. He took a few tentative steps, practicing the way the girls in the park walked, hips swaying, heels clicking against the floor. It was harder than it looked, but Aidan didn't mind. He adjusted, found his rhythm, and with each step he began to feel more and more like the women he watched every evening. There was a certain power in the way they moved, a confidence he'd never experienced before. He caught a glimpse of himself in the full-length mirror across the room, and for the first time in ages, he didn't look like the same quiet man who had been hiding away behind his desk all day. No. In that moment he saw someone new, someone bold, someone free. The next evening, as he sat back in his chair, watching the girls in the park, he decided he needed to push things further. He had started to study their mannerisms, how they flicked their hair, how they adjusted their skirts, how they laughed and talked in a way that felt so unapologetically themselves. He imitated them as best as he could. He bought a pack of menthol cigarettes and mimicked the way they held them, the delicate yet confident way they exhaled smoke into the air. Aidan found himself speaking to his reflection, as if he were one of them. "I'm Keely," he whispered to himself, testing the name on his tongue. Keely! It felt right, even if it was only a name he'd given himself in the comfort of his flat. It was part of the transformation, the way he imagined this new identity, the woman he could become in his own mind. Keely was someone who didn't care about fitting in, someone who could wear whatever she wanted and never apologize for it. Each evening, Aidan or rather, Keely spent more time practicing. She would step into her heels, sway her hips, and practice the lilt of the accent, mimicking the playful arrogance she'd seen in the girls below. She spoke to herself, laughed, and grew more comfortable in the skin she'd adopted. As the days passed, Keely became more real to Aidan. The act of transformation, of adopting this new persona, brought a strange sense of relief, like shedding the weight of expectations he didn't even realize he was carrying. In some way, Keely wasn't just a copy of the girls in the park. She was something he created, a version of himself that had always been hidden beneath layers of self-doubt and routine. One evening, as Keely stood at the window, watching the teenagers outside, she felt a connection to them. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was part of their world, at least in her own way. There was something about the night air, the sound of laughter drifting up from below, that made her feel alive. She wasn't quite ready to go out there and join them, not yet, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged, even if only in the secrecy of her flat. As the days went by, Keely became a regular presence in Aidan's life, a character he would slip into each evening like a second skin. It wasn't enough to just wear the latex skirt and heels anymore. Keely needed more. She needed the full experience, the makeup, the accessories, everything that would make her feel truly real. So, one quiet afternoon, Aidan sat at his desk, now completely engrossed in this new world he was creating. He was on his laptop again, scrolling through beauty tutorials and makeup tips, trying to find a way to replicate the look of the chav girls he'd become so obsessed with. The first makeup haul came soon after. He ordered the basics, a heavy foundation to match the warm, golden tones of the girls he'd seen, long fake eyelashes, bold eyeliner, and a bright, almost garish lipstick in a shade of fuchsia pink. When the package arrived, Aidan, or Keely, couldn't wait to get started. She stood in front of the mirror, the makeup in front of her like an unfamiliar landscape. With trembling fingers, she began to apply the foundation, the creamy texture smoothing over her skin in thick, uneven layers. She struggled at first, her hands unsure of where to place the blush, how to properly accentuate her cheekbones. But Keely wasn't the type of girl to shy away from boldness, so she pressed on, layering more and more makeup until it felt like a second skin. Gluing on the fake eyelashes was hard enough, but the eyeliner was the hardest part. She had never worn it before, and her unsteady hand made a mess of it, but she cleaned it up and kept going, giving herself thick, dramatic wings that made her eyes look wide and intense. But what to do with her hair? Sure, it was longer than most of her male friends, but hardly feminine. Then, she had an idea. In the back of a drawer, she found some hair grips and a hairpiece, a blonde ponytail that an old girlfriend had abandoned. She brushed her hair back, held it down with the grips, and clipped on the ponytail. When she was done, she stepped back from the mirror, staring at the reflection before him. Keely looked back at her with a mix of defiance and mystery. Her face was a mask of confidence, though Aidan could feel the unfamiliarity of the look. It felt surreal to see himself this way, but also, in some strange way, liberating. He was no longer the quiet observer. Keely was a bold, audacious persona who demanded attention. Aidan wasn't done yet. The next day, he ventured to the local mall, keeping a careful eye on the girls he passed, studying their fashion with intense curiosity. After a few hours of browsing, he picked out more clothes and accessories, some huge silver hoop earrings, an ankle chain, several bra and panty sets, stockings and suspenders, tight, form-fitting leggings in shimmering metallic colours, a few more PVC skirts, and some brightly coloured crop tops. He also bought a clutch bag, sleek and shiny in black, just like the ones the girls carried around the park. Inside it, he placed the essentials, makeup, tampons and condoms, just as he'd seen the girls do. It was important, he thought, to be realistic. If Keely were ever going to go out, she would need to have everything ready. Back home, Aidan continued his transformation into Keely. The more he dressed in the clothes, the more comfortable he felt. He practiced his walk over and over, strutting around his flat as he had seen the girls do in the park. Each step was deliberate and full of intent, hips swaying, heels clicking sharply against the floor. His hands, now adorned with long pink false nails, were carefully positioned, arms slightly bent, as if holding an invisible cigarette between his fingers. Keely was becoming more real to him with every passing day, but the urge to step outside, to take this transformation into the real world, grew stronger. Aidan, no, Keely, had been practicing for weeks now. He felt the need to be seen, to walk through the streets and let the world notice him. The weather had cooled in the evenings, and the park would soon be full of the usual crowd of teenagers again. Keely had watched them for so long that now, the thought of stepping into their world, if only for a brief moment, was intoxicating. That night, Aidan finally gathered the courage. It was after sunset, and the streetlights cast long shadows as he stood at the door, clutching his clutch bag. He'd dressed carefully black tights that shimmered under the light, a tight crop top, a silver-padded jacket and his favourite shiny black pencil skirt. The heels were higher tonight, almost intimidating, but Keely didn't shy away from challenges. She embraced them. Before she left, Keely took a final look in the mirror. Her face was bold, her makeup thick and flawless, her hair perfectly styled. She felt both nervous and alive. This was it. She was going out as Keely, and nothing could hold her back now. Stepping out onto the street, Aidan, now fully transformed, felt his heart race. The city buzzed around him, but there was something exhilarating about the way the night seemed to open up before him. The streets, the park, the people, everything felt new, as if he was walking in a world where he didn't belong, but was determined to make a place for himself. As he approached the park, he saw them, the group of girls, the chavs, gathered at their usual spot. They stood in a cluster, laughing and chatting, cigarettes dangling from their fingers, their heels clicking as they moved about with ease. They were everything Aidan had watched for so long, confident, bold, magnetic, and so sexy. Keely's pulse quickened. She walked closer, making sure to catch their attention. She held her head high, her stride deliberate and calculated. She swayed her hips more than necessary, making sure that every step was bold, that every movement screamed confidence. She passed by the group, careful to make sure they saw her. As she walked, one of the girls glanced over, a small smile, curving her lips. Another girl raised an eyebrow, taking in the new arrival. Keely's heart skipped a beat. They were looking at her, not with disdain, not with judgment, just watching another chav girl click past. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Keely felt a rush of satisfaction, a sense of belonging in that moment. She had made an impact. The girls were noticing her, and for a brief second, she felt like one of the bold, confident figures she had admired from her balcony. Keely walked on, her heels clicking with a rhythm that matched the beating of her heart. She didn't know where this new life would take her, but for tonight, as she strolled through the park under the dim glow of the streetlights, she was someone different, someone freer, someone seen. The following evening, Keely couldn't shake the feeling that she had left something unfinished. Her walk through the park had felt like a victory, but tonight, she was determined to push herself further, to see if she could truly become part of the world she'd been watching from his balcony all these weeks. She had practiced enough in front of the mirror, rehearsing her walk, the way she flicked her hair, the look she'd give when passing by the group of girls. Tonight, she was ready for more. She dressed carefully this time, a skin-tight, glittery silver pencil skirt that hugged her curves just right. She paired it with a black crop top, tight enough to show off her waist, and strapped on her favourite black heels, the ones that made her feel taller, more confident. The makeup was bold, as always, her lips painted a bright gloss pink, and her eyes framed with heavy dramatic eyeliner. She slipped on her black clutch, filled with the usual items makeup, tampons and condoms, and with a deep breath, she stepped out into the night. As she walked down the street, the cool evening air felt electrifying. She couldn't help but feel a little nervous, but there was an excitement pulsing through her, a rush of adrenaline. She passed the usual spots, the lampposts flickering, the empty benches in the park, and then, just as she had hoped, she spotted them, the girls. They were sitting in their usual spot, leaning against the fence near the park entrance, a cloud of cigarette smoke drifting up into the dark sky around them. There was Tracy, the one with the bleached blonde hair, and a couple of other girls she'd seen before, Amanda and Lucy, laughing and chatting, their laughter ringing out like music. They all had their high heels on, their leggings or skirts glistening in the low light. Keely's heart raced, but she kept her head high, her hips swaying with purpose as she walked closer to them. This time, as she passed by, she made sure they would notice her. She didn't look at the ground. Instead, she met their eyes, offering a small, confident smile. "Oi, love," came a voice from behind her, and Keely froze. She turned to see Tracy looking at her, cigarette dangling from her fingers, a playful glint in her eyes. Got a smoke? Keely's heart skipped. They were talking to her. She hadn't expected it so soon, but the opportunity was right there. For a moment, she hesitated then. Without thinking too much, she reached into her clutch and pulled out a cigarette, offering it to Tracy with a calm smile. As Tracy slid it between her lips, Keely flicked a flame from her lighter and lit it. "You know it," Keely said, trying to keep her voice steady, though inside she was buzzing with nervous energy. Tracy raised an eyebrow, impressed. "Cheers, babe," she said, taking the cigarette with a grin. She lit it, took a long drag, and passed it to Keely. "You look different. Don't think I've seen you around here before." Keely took out another cigarette, sparking it with her lighter and inhaling the smoke deeply, trying to mimic the relaxed, effortless air the girls always had. "I've been around," she said, her voice a little softer than usual. "Just haven't seen you lot before." She felt ridiculous, like she was trying too hard to blend in, but at the same time, there was something about being with them that made her feel like she wasn't pretending, like she belonged. Amanda, the one with dark hair, leaned in with a curious look. "Your makeup is, totally on point," she said, gesturing to Keely's bold eyeliner and the bright pink lipstick. "What do you use? You're definitely rocking it." Keely felt a rush of warmth. "Oh, thanks," she said, smiling. "It's Maybelline Ultra Lash and MAC Lip, nothing special." She tried to act like it was no big deal, but inside she was ecstatic that they were noticing her. Lucy, who had been leaning back against the fence, squinted at Keely's outfit. "Your skirt is way shinier than anything we've got," she said. "Where'd you get that?" Keely grinned, a little proud of herself. "Found it online." "Pretty little thing. Gotta have something a bit different, right?" she replied, twirling a bit in the skirt to give them a better view. Tracy chuckled and took another drag from her cigarette. "You're not bad, you know that. You've got some serious style." Her eyes scanned Keely up and down, and then a devilish grin appeared on her face. "Hey, why don't you come for a drink with us? We're heading to that bar down the street. You should come." Keely's heart raced again, but this time it was a thrill she could handle. She'd been practicing for moments like this. A drink? A real night out with these girls? She couldn't pass it up. "Sure," Keely said, keeping her voice cool despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I'd love to." The girls laughed, and Tracy stood up, flicking her cigarette to the ground and stamping it out with her heel. "Let's go then. You're gonna have a blast, trust me." They walked together to the bar, chatting about random things, such as how Tracy had gotten a new tattoo, how Amanda had just broken up with her boyfriend, how Lucy was planning a night out with her mates next week. Keely listened closely, absorbing every word, wanting to fit in, wanting to be part of their world. She was nervous, but excited. For the first time, she felt like she was in the right place. The bar was a few blocks away, a dimly lit place that was loud with chatter and clinking glasses. The air smelled of beer and perfume, and the music was thumping, a mix of pop and dance tracks that set the mood for the night. The girls took a booth by the window, and soon enough, they were sipping on cocktails and laughing, as if the night was just another part of their routine. Keely sat back, watching them closely, trying to blend in. But then a couple of guys walked over to their table. One was tall with dark hair, the other shorter but muscular. They looked vaguely interested in the group, but their attention immediately landed on Keely. "Hey girls," the taller one said, giving them a friendly smile. "You out for the night?" Tracy, never one to be shy, grinned and waved them over. "Yeah, we're just enjoying the night. You looking for a drink?" The two men slid into the chairs beside them, introducing themselves as Jake and Mark. They were both chatty and friendly, asking the girls about their night and where they usually hung out. Mark turned his attention to Keely, his eyes taking in her shiny skirt and bold makeup. "You look amazing," Mark said, his voice low and warm. "Where do you usually go out? You seem like you know how to have a good time." Keely felt a blush rise in her cheeks, but she kept her cool. "Oh, just wherever the mood takes me," she said, smiling flirtatiously. "I like to be spontaneous." Tracy rolled her eyes but smiled. "She's a wild one, this one," she said to the guys, nudging Keely with her elbow. Jake raised his glass. "I like that. You up for grabbing a drink sometime? You seem fun." Keely glanced at the girls, her heart racing. This was it. She wasn't just an observer anymore. She was now a chav girl. She was one of them. Keely smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment settle into her chest. "Sure," she said, locking eyes with Mark. "I'd love that." The night carried on, the conversation flowing easily. Keely had never felt more alive, more part of something. It was strange. She had spent so much time watching them from a distance, but now, as she laughed and talked with the girls and the guys, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. She was Keely after all, and for tonight, that was enough. The days following that night at the bar felt like a whirlwind for Keely. She was still buzzing from the attention, from the way the girls had accepted her so effortlessly, and from the way Mark had looked at her as if she were something he genuinely wanted to get to know. The idea that someone like him, someone confident and easygoing, would be interested in her, Keely, was something that had never crossed her mind. And yet, here she was, getting ready for a proper date. Keely had spent hours picking out her outfit for tonight. She wanted to look perfect, but still effortlessly cool. Her outfit consisted of a ripped black band tee, a pair of tight high-waisted skinny jeans, and, of course, her favourite shiny black heels that clicked against the floor with every step she took. The makeup was a little more subdued tonight since she didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, but she also needed to maintain that air of confidence. A bit of eyeliner, some blush, and a soft gloss on her lips. She took a final look in the mirror, adjusted the straps of her clutch, and walked out the door. Mark had picked the venue. It was a punk band playing at a small venue just outside the city centre. It wasn't her usual scene, but Keely had agreed right away. She was curious. She wanted to see a new side of life, to see what this world was like. The night air was cool as Keely stepped into the club, the thumping music reverberating through her chest even before she entered. The place was dimly lit, with neon lights flickering above the bar and the walls covered in posters of old-school punk bands. There was a palpable energy in the air, an electricity that only seemed to intensify as the crowd swelled, everyone eager for the show to begin. Mark had already gotten them drinks and was waiting by the stage, his eyes lighting up when he saw Keely. "You look amazing," he said, offering her a smile that made her feel warm from the inside out. "Ready to rock?" Keely chuckled nervously, still adjusting to the fact that she was here, at a punk gig, looking like someone who belonged. "I think so. Let's see if I can handle the noise," she joked. But the truth was, she was excited. She had no idea what to expect. But the idea of experiencing something new, something raw and real, felt thrilling. The band took the stage, and the crowd erupted in cheers as the guitars began to scream through the speakers. The music was loud, fast, and chaotic, but there was something exhilarating about it. Keely let herself be swept up in the madness, dancing and laughing with Mark, her body moving to the rhythm, the beat making her heart race. The crowd was wild, everyone jumping and shouting, but Keely felt connected to the moment, to the people around her. She didn't care that she wasn't part of the usual scene. She was part of something now, something that felt alive and unfiltered. After the band finished their set, Mark pulled Keely closer, his arm around her waist as they made their way to the bar for another round. The atmosphere had shifted now, quieter, but still vibrant with the afterglow of the show. The two of them found a quiet corner, chatting and laughing about the band, about the ridiculousness of some of the lyrics, and about their favourite punk bands. Keely had a couple of drinks, maybe more than she had intended. The alcohol made her feel lighter, more carefree, as the conversation drifted from one topic to another. The nervousness she had felt earlier in the evening started to fade, and she found herself feeling comfortable in Mark's presence, comfortable in a way she hadn't felt with anyone in a long time. They were talking about life, about their interests, when Mark suddenly leaned in closer, his voice quieter. "You're not like the other girls," he said, his eyes studying her intently. "There's something different about you, in a good way." Keely's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't sure what to say. Was he asking more than he realised? Did he know something? Her mind raced. The alcohol made her feel like she was on the edge of saying something important, something that had been simmering inside her for a while. "I'm not exactly like the other girls," Keely said, almost without thinking, her voice a little slurred. She laughed nervously, but there was a weight to her words now, a vulnerability creeping in that hadn't been there earlier. "Mark, there's something I need to tell you." Mark, ever the laid-back guy, didn't seem fazed. He leaned back in his chair, smiling slightly. "What's up? You can tell me anything." Keely took a deep breath. The words felt heavier now, but somehow the alcohol was giving her courage. She couldn't keep this secret forever. "I'm not exactly who I've been pretending to be," she said, the words rushing out in a breathless blur. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. "I mean, I am, but I'm not, really. I'm not a girl. I'm a guy." Mark blinked, and for a moment, Keely thought she might have ruined everything. The world around her seemed to stop, her eyes fixed on Mark, waiting for his reaction. But he didn't look shocked. He didn't look disgusted or angry. Instead, Mark shrugged, taking a sip of his drink, his expression unchanged. "So?" Keely's stomach dropped, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "What? I mean, so what?" Mark repeated, his voice casual and easy. He looked at her with that same unbothered smile. I like you, Keely. Doesn't matter what's under the makeup or whatever else. You're cool, and I'm having a great time with you. Keely blinked, stunned, the weight of her confession still hanging in the air, but somehow, lighter now. But, you don't care? Mark chuckled and shook his head. Why would I care? I mean, sure, if you told me you were secretly a vampire or something, that would be a bit much, but everyone has their stuff, you know? And honestly, I think it's awesome that you feel comfortable enough to tell me. It's like brave or something. Keely felt the last of the tension in her body fade away. The fear of rejection that had clung to her all night dissolved into the buzz of the alcohol, and she let out a breath she didn't even realize she was holding. Thanks, Keely said softly, her voice thick with relief. I really appreciate that. Mark grinned. No problem. You're a good laugh. That's what matters to me. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and light-hearted conversation. They ended up leaving the bar and walking around the city, chatting about nothing and everything. The air had grown colder, but Keely didn't mind. She felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of belonging she hadn't expected. As they walked side by side, Mark's hand brushed against hers. Keely, feeling braver than ever, reached out and took his hand, their fingers interlacing naturally. For the first time in ages, Keely didn't feel like an outsider. She wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was just Keely, real, and accepted, and free. And in that moment, that was all that mattered.